The 2024-25 Premier League campaign is on the horizon. In preparation, we're previewing every single team and discussing how they'll shape up over the next campaign. We take a look at the transfer business conducted by the teams so far and offer suggestions of who else they should move for before the season gets started. Today, we look at Brentford. After a disappointing season marred by suspension for Ivan Toney that left them 16th in the league, we discuss how the Bees can bounce back this season. This is our 2024-25 season preview for Brentford. Alright, let's talk about Brentford then. We like to start these videos by going back through the last season and deciphering what went right or what went well for these clubs. Now Brentford, I think their 23-24 season was very difficult. They ended up 16th in the Premier League, and while they never really looked like they would go down, I think they were somewhat fortunate that the level of the teams below them was definitely lower this season.
Yeah, 100%. It was a really tough season for Brentford. A lot of off-the-pitch stuff dominating what was really happening on the pitch, and kind of covered up what was a really difficult period. We saw Brentford, they had a really good first couple seasons, but last season was it was a bit miserable at times, really. They pulled off some good results, but most of it was really games that they should have been winning, and they were just not getting the results out of them, and they weren't picking up enough points. Saw them slide down table, but as you say, that's the thing, it's really weird. They picked up enough points to be very safe, but there wasn't enough in the performances to really push them up further up the table like we have seen them in the past years.
Yeah, it didn't feel like a happy place to be, the Brentford Community Stadium last season. They seemed to struggle to get results over the line. They weren't scoring many goals. I think a lot of that comes down to obviously the suspension for Ivan Toney, and of course the impact of that can't be undoubted. However, I think you could also say, well, why didn't Brentford sign a replacement? Because Johan Visser, they were big boots to fill. He didn't really fill them. And I think, as I say, they missed that massively. They didn't really score many goals last season. And they also shipped a lot at the other end. For Brentford, it was a season that just didn't go right at all. But Brentford are very good at recruitment. Brentford are very good at looking at the numbers. If the numbers suggest they should have been higher, I don't think they'll have any concerns. No. So, yeah, however, looking into this new season, they've just finished 16th. I'd have expected to see a lot more early action in the transfer window. They've been linked with a few players, but it's not been much concrete. They have signed one, but he's now done his meniscus. So let's get into incomings and outgoings. We'll start with the signing of Igor Thiago, the forward from Club Brugge. I think this is a really strange signing. I think there'll be a lot of people that are optimistic. I think there'll be a lot of people that are a bit pessimistic about this. So we're going to talk about it because 33 million club record transfer for Brentford. It feels like a big gamble.
It is, and it is a strange one for me. And obviously he might come into this Premier League and tear it up, and he might be a phenomenal player. But it is bizarre, because realistically Tony's going to come back in. He's going to start. So to spend such a high fee on a player that isn't going to start every week does surprise me a little bit. Perhaps they're thinking that Tony might go. Perhaps they're maybe wanting to prefer Thiago at times, or they're going to play both of them. Who knows? But it, as you say, it is a big sum to put on a player that A, has now gone and got injured, and B, I don't know. I'm a bit surprised by this one.
Yeah, just to talk about his numbers from last season: 29 goals, 5 assists in 55 matches in all competitions for Club Brugge. It's fairly prolific. However, when you look at that FPRF profile on screen, his non-pen goals in the 75th percentile and non-pen XG in the 84th percentile, really strong. And it shows that he's getting into good positions, and if you create chances for him, he's likely to put them away. However, the other stats worry me. He doesn't seem to be very good in possession. He doesn't get enough shots away for me compared to what you'd be hoping to see. Perhaps because in the Belgian league you don't need to get a load of shots away, and Club Brugge I don't watch a whole lot of Club Brugge, but if they're a team that like to create a few chances, that could be a system thing. So we'll see how he performs for Thomas Frank, and we know he'll get a lot of chances at Brentford because they are good at creating chances for Ivan Toney, evidently. So I think it's going to be an interesting one. I think this is definitely with Ivan Toney leaving in mind, because he's only got a year left in his contract now, I believe. So I wouldn't be surprised if they look to move him on this summer. He's been quite open in the fact he wants to leave, and I think if Chelsea eventually want to sign a striker this window, if Tottenham actually want to sign a forward at any time, I think Toney will be top of their list. if they can get 50, 60, maybe even 70 million for Tony, that'd be fantastic money for Brentford.
Yeah, 100%. And obviously, if they do get a big fee for Tony, it means they have turned a profit on their striker replacement. But yeah, maybe they are. Maybe they're kind of thinking that Tony has gone. Yeah, that probably.
But it feels like, I mean, obviously they'll review all the numbers and the data, and they will make smart signings. That's what Brentford do. However, it feels like a very big gamble on a player that's quite unknown, and to spend your record transfer fee, it's something that could go incredibly well. It could go horribly wrong. In my experience, signing unknown players for a lot of money, as a Chelsea fan, doesn't tend to go particularly well. So, yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting one. Let's talk outgoings then, because there's nothing too high profile, but there's a bit to go through. Nothing's happened at Brentford this summer.
No.
They've just had a very quiet summer. Shandon Baptiste has left the club on a free transfer. He's someone who has been fairly reliable when called upon in the last few seasons, but ultimately, as Brentford look to move forward, I think they've moved on from Shandon Baptiste. Yeah. But actually, him at Luton Town next season, that's a great move for him, and I think he'll be part of a Luton side who should be right at the sharp end of the Championship. Thomas Strakosha has joined AEK Athens on a free. He was a fairly decent backup goalkeeper. He was never going to be more than that. And yeah, he's left on a free contract, so nothing too big there. And then obviously David Raya, last season was on loan at Arsenal, £32 million coming into the club this summer. The reason that's significant is that obviously they lost that player a year ago on loan, but the money hasn't come in until now, so it's gonna feel like a free £30 million because they don't lose anything they didn't have last season. And I think the loss of David Raya was a big reason they didn't perform particularly well. I think that losing Raya has really exposed their defensive fallibility, the fact that they are so open defensively, and Flecken did okay. But he's definitely not a David Raya level goalkeeper. No. And actually, I think we're now starting to realise just how good Raya is.
100%.
So, yeah, that was a big loss for Brentford. Flecken did okay last season. He'll be hoping to build on that with a stronger campaign this year. But Brentford have got to be a little bit more defensively solid, especially if the clubs that come up, Leicester, Southampton, Ipswich, especially if those three are competitive are more competitive than the three who came up last season. I think Brentford are in real trouble of being dragged into a bit of a relegation dogfight. However, they are also a little fortunate that the teams around them seem to be falling apart and imploding.
Yeah.
So if they can just not have any betting bans this season, Brentford might be able to start to climb back up the Premier League table. So I think there's positives and negatives going into this campaign for Brentford.
Yeah, I mean, 4 weeks now. 4 weeks until the Premier League season starts, Brentford need to be more proactive in the transfer market. That they've only made one addition. They've clearly got the money there because and they've got, as you say, they've got the Raya money. They didn't have a good campaign last year. For me, Brentford in the next 2-3 weeks need to start making the deals in preparation for the Premier League season starting, because you want to get. I'm not saying they need to do it today, tomorrow, but they want to start thinking about signings. I mean, only one signing after a season like last season to only make one deal so far. They need to improve on that. And I'm sure they will. I'm sure they'll come out and they'll make a few more deals and then we can evaluate again. But for me, they need to be a bit more proactive.
My caveat to that is actually, we're going to look at the squad now and we'll put it up on screen. Brentford's squad is really well balanced. You look at it and I mean, you go, well, right back and right wing, there's only one player in that position. But there are players across the field who can play that role. You've only got Rorslev at right back, but Hickey can play there. And Brentford are apparently looking at bringing Sergio Reggie in on a permanent to play left back. So then suddenly you've got two options in both full backs. So not really an exciting one, that. He was on loan there last season. He played fairly well. I wouldn't be surprised if they went in for Reggie at a fairly cheap fee. Then at right wing, you've only got Brian Mbeumo, but Godos can play there, Damsgaard can play there, both players who play central midfield in Brentford's system. I guess also Kevin Schade, and who I think was injured for a lot of last season, and Lewis Potter could also both play on the right wing if it's needed. So they're not really short in those areas. In goal, Flecken, Valdemarsson, I don't think there's any issues there. No. Flecken had a fairly solid season last year. Provided he doesn't suddenly have some huge drop-off, I think he's going to be fairly comfortable as Brentford's starting goalkeeper. Your centre-half partnership of Collins and Pinnock, I think that's fairly decent. And then with me, Aya, Zanka, all as options as well, they're fairly secure in that position. Apparently, they are looking at Red Bull Salzburg's Strahina Palavalic, something like that. He's a Serbian defender who I'm going to find the name, but he had a really good season last year. There's a lot of interest in him, so it's going to be very difficult for Brentford to pull off. But I think he would be a good signing if they can.
Yeah, I mean, I look at this back four for Brentford. I'm slightly surprised that they are so defensively weak, because I think the Collins and Pinnock partnership is Collins and Pinnock's partnership is very, very strong. They're two good centre halves for me. They're physical. They're good in the air. They're a good centre halves, and then the fullbacks as well are good players. So it does beg a question as to what is going on at Brentford that means they are conceding so many, and they are looking so not a bit weak at the back, basically.
Yeah, so Strahinja Pavlovic, by the way, this is the player they are looking at from Red Bull Salzburg. 23 years old, Serbian left-footed centre-half, very tall, had a strong season with Salzburg last year and a very good Euros with Serbia. Looked very much in his depth there. So I think he would be a really nice addition, but at £20 million, £25 million, is it a signing that Brentford need to make?
I don't think so. Again, it would be a bit bizarre to spend that amount of money. You've already got five first-team centre-halves.
Unless they look to move someone on, of course.
Potentially so, and they may look to do that. But yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like it's, especially defensively, but maybe all over the pitch, actually on reflection, looking at the squad, perhaps it is a sell before you buy kind of situation at the moment with Brentford.
Maybe. The thing to note as well in that back line, Ben Mee's now 34. Zanka, I think, is in his 30s as well. So you've got two aging centre-halves. Aya's still 26. Pinnock's approaching 30, I want to say. And Collins, I think, around 26 as well. So it is a slightly old profile of defence. Yeah. Pavlovic, I think, at 23 would be a decent signing in that regard, because you're going to bring in a young defender to come and mix that up a little bit. Because when you consider, yes, they've got Collins and Mee, but Pavlovic is better than Ben Mee and younger. Yeah. So I think that's probably a good signing, but we'll see if Brentford make it. There's a lot of competition for that move, so we'll see what happens there. Also at left back, I mentioned Aaron Hickey and Rico Henry. Henry was injured, I think, for a large part of last season, which was a huge shame, because I think he's one of the... Again, we talk about the miss of Ivan Toney, but you lose a lot of your creativity without Henry, because he's a really good crosser of the ball. I think Reguilon in the second half of the season came in and did a really good job, but if Henry is back fit and firing next season, I think you gain yourself a really 100%. Strong fullback there. The midfield makeup, I think, is really decent. You've got Norgard and Onyeka, who can rotate in that more defensive role. You've got then Vitaly Janelt, who has constantly been linked with big moves away. And I think if there were to be an offer in the 40-50 range, anything north of that, you've got to be considering that. Especially considering how good Jarmo Lojic was last season, his first real season with Brentford. He was signed the season before last. He only made one appearance in that campaign. I think he played a bit for Brentford's B team. And then last season he came in and started. He played 30 games over the season. So, yeah, he's certainly starting to be part of Brentford's squad now. And if Janelt was to go, I think Jarmo Lojic would be suitable for more minutes, for a more starting role in this system. Then you've got Damsgaard and Godos, who play that more advanced midfielder role. Saman Godos is someone I've not really seen a whole lot from, but he's okay to be a backup. Mikael Damsgaard was more of a winger at Sampdoria, but now he's playing a more central role in this Brentford side, and he looks fairly solid in that. And when you consider the strength of the starting front three of Visser, Toney and Bermo, you can see why Damsgaard has to be shoehorned into that midfield role. Then, as I say, so Visser on the left-hand side, competing with Lewis Potter and Kevin Schade. Schade was injured for large parts of last season. Lewis Potter, he showed glimpses, but there wasn't enough consistency for me. So they're two players with a lot to prove, because I don't know why Kevin Schade was signed on permanent. Because obviously they signed him on permanent last summer. Before then they had him on loan, and he didn't really impress. But they brought him on permanent. Then he got injured for most of last season. I think there's still a good player there, but he hasn't shown it yet in a Brentford shirt. Yeah,
I definitely think you're right there with Schade and Lewis Potter. I think Lewis Potter's shown a bit more, definitely, but there are two players who could, who have the ability to do really well, and they could really do with a strong campaign next season. But as you say, in the last couple of seasons, we haven't seen that from either of them. It would be good to see one of them, if not both of them, firing. Because they are good players. On their day, they can cause defences a lot of problems. Now will be a good time to show up and show their quality.
Yeah, definitely so. And then we've already spoken in that striker department. But if Ivan Toney does stay, he'll likely start with Igor Thiago as a backup. Now, the big question mark for me, and the signing I want to talk about, because we like to suggest signings in these videos, what I'm going to suggest is another striker, but only if Ivan Toney leaves. Because the problem Brentford have now is that Toney might leave, Thiago's just injured his meniscus, which means he will be out for the start of the season, likely until September time. So they're in a bit of a spot of bother there. So I'm going to make a suggestion of Max Bayer. He plays for Hoffenheim in Germany. Had a really strong. He's only 21 years old, but had a really strong season in his debut Bundesliga season. 16 goals, or his first full Bundesliga season. 16 goals. Really strong numbers. So if you look at his FBref profile, he's someone who gets a lot of shots away at goal, ranked in the 85th percentile for shots on target, the 86th percentile for non-pen goals, 65th percentile for non-pen XG, and 74th for shots. So he's someone who gets a high volume of shots away. He's someone who has a high volume of goals, and his non-pen goals were very high last season. I think he's someone who went under the radar in the Bundesliga because of the ridiculous goal-scoring exploits of Harry Kane.
Yeah.
Didn't really notice that, a young player in Max Bayer had put up 16 goals, but he's someone who definitely got the attention of a lot of people in that last season. Apparently Brentford are interested in him. For me, it'll be a great move. My fear again is around that link up, and it's the same fear I have with Iger Thiago. However, that's something that could be down to system.
Yeah.
If Hoffenheim are a very aggressive team and he is playing as that sort of on-the-shoulder striker, then I don't think you need to worry too much about that. And to be fair, Brentford don't really use their striker too much in possession. Then they do use Tony a little bit to play off of, and Bayer would definitely be a different type of striker because he'd be more like an Ollie Watkins, get in behind the shoulder, balls over the top, that type of thing. He's very quick, very composed finisher. I think it'll be a bit of a gamble because he's 21. He's only played in the Bundesliga. It screams Timo Werner to me. But if he can get his finishing under control in the Premier League, like he does in the Bundesliga, I see no issues as to why he wouldn't adapt. I think a fee around 15 to 20 million would be a really nice fee to get this player in on, and I think he's really decent.
Yeah, I like him. He's definitely a more classic number 9. You get him in behind, you give him a chance, and he's going to take it. Yeah, he might not get involved in the play, and he might not have all the credentials that you want from your striker just yet, but he's very, very young. But as I say, I like strikers who, when you give them a chance, their main priority is to get it on target. He's not going to faff around in front of goal. If he was to come in, we saw for Hoffenheim. He doesn't mess around. He gets the ball, he gets the shot away, and he scores the goals. And that's exactly what you want. You want consistent goal scoring from your striker. He might not do the fancy stuff. He might not do the complicated stuff just yet. But it's gets the basics right. Does what he needs to do. His job is to score goals, and he's the perfect example of that. Just getting the job done. Just does what he needs to do for his team, and because he does that, he comes up with brilliant numbers like 16 goals. Yeah, it's just by having that confidence and that ability to get your chance and take your chance.
For me, Ivan Toney is the complete Premier League forward. Yeah. He is physical, he's tall, he can get in behind, he can score with his head, he can score with either foot, he can score penalties. He is the complete forward. With Thiago and Bayer, you'd be replacing both his qualities, but with two signings who would probably be about a similar fee to what you get for Tony. Because with Thiago, you get that big physical player who's a good finisher with great hold-up. And with Bayer, you get a quick player who can get in behind and who can score goals and is a composed finisher. And I think it would work in that regard because the reason Tony's so effective is because he can score against all oppositions.
Yeah.
The reason these two could be very effective is that if you need a certain type of player for one game, you've got that option. If you need a different type of player, you've got that option as well. So they'd be able to assess the opposition, decide, do we need Bayer for this game? Do we need Iker Thiago? And then make a decision based off that.
Yeah.
But yeah, for Brentford, I think Tony's got a year left at the very most. Either someone's going to come in this summer, and the only issue for Brentford is he's only got a year left on his deal. So either he's going to leave next summer, or it's going to be a relatively small fee this summer for what they would expect. I mean, at one point they were demanding 100 million for him, which is ridiculous, but that is what clubs in the Premier League can do. So I think they're kind of, if they get a bid around 40, 50 million, they've been shoehorned into a position. They might just have to accept that.
Yeah, and I think that would be a bit of a shame because that would be a bit below what they would expect. But yeah, I think I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Ivan Toney move on, and that is something Brentford will have to address quickly if it does happen. But it's a hard one to deal with big chances like that because we know that the big sides are happy to wait closer to the start of the season, and Brentford have got to be careful. They don't get caught in a position where suddenly we're 2 weeks away from the Premier League starting and they haven't got a number 9. So you've got to be aware of that situation. But the Thiago signing definitely feels like they've planned for that situation.
It did, definitely so. My problem with Tony, if he doesn't leave this summer, is that Brentford would lose him on a free. And for me, that is absolutely criminal.
Because you can still get 40, 50 million this summer, which is completely
Even 30
different.
is better than nothing next summer. So Brentford have got to consider that. If they're not getting anything over 30, then maybe they've got to look at that. I think they'd like to get 40 million, 50 million for him in an ideal world. Yeah, again, if Chelsea or Tottenham want a striker, I think they'll look at him. Tony, I think that'll be their target.
Yeah.
The other issue they've got is that Dom Solanke could be a more affordable option if they price Tony too high for those clubs. So it's difficult to judge because they want to get as much money as possible, but they also want to get some money for Tony. They can't afford to lose him for nothing. So it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out. I think Bayer would be a really nice option though if they do lose Tony, and someone who I don't think would be too difficult to prize away from Hoffenheim. So yeah, I'm really excited to see how Brentford look next season. I think that last season was a little bit of an anomaly, given the injuries to Henry, to Tony, adapting to not having David Raya in goal anymore. Yeah. Clearly those players have affected, how Brentford have played, and not having Neil Maupay, which is of course a huge loss. How could anyone handle life without Maupay?
Dear.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see how Brentford line up this season. I think their squad's set up quite nicely. It's just about what can they add to that in the last few weeks of this window as we get into the start of the season. What can they do to try and take their squad up the league? I think Pavlovic would be a nice addition if they can get him. I think Bayer could be good if they lose Tony. So it's looking good. Some loose predictions then, because immediately I don't think they're in the conversation for relegation. I think that Ipswich Town, Leicester City, Southampton, Nottingham Forest are all lower quality.
Yeah.
I think that Fulham are in a real tough spot at the moment because they have lost everyone and aren't signing anyone. So I think it's going to be interesting.
Brentford are an interesting side because I think 16th last season isn't a reflection on the quality of the squad or how they play their football. I think 16th makes it seem like they really struggled last year, which I don't think they did. So yeah, I don't think they'll be in the bottom lot conversation. I think they'll get caught in a bit of a middle period. So I don't think they'll get drawn into the relegation battle. But I don't think they're going to be in that battle, for 11th, 12th, with your Bournemouth, for your Palace and all that. I don't think they're going to be in that battle either. So I'm expecting a 14th or 15th, kind of in the middle pack. Not kind of close to everyone, but not close enough to be involved. It could be a bit of a mediocre season for Brentford, but that's just because they'll be building on top of what was last season's disappointment.
Yeah, when you consider the fact they're only 10 points off 10th place Crystal Palace,
the
gap there isn't massive. No. The thing is, at the moment, there's a huge gap between 8th, which is on 60 points, and then 10th on 49. But between Crystal Palace in 10th and Brentford down in 16th, there's only 10 points there. Another win, another couple of wins, suddenly it looks a lot more positive last season for Brentford. So I don't think they will be unduly worried. However, they can't afford to be complacent because if any of those sides that do come up from the Championship play really well this season, like Leicester definitely could, like Ipswich definitely could, like Southampton might, I think there's a chance there that Brentford could get dragged into it. So they've got to be really careful. However, my personal prediction is that they won't be dragged into that. I think they'll probably be a little more comfortable this season.
Yeah, for me, Brentford's main problem last year was they didn't turn enough draws into wins. They didn't turn enough losses into draws, but mainly because Ivan Toney wasn't there to bail them out at times. Yeah. But yeah, as you say, a couple more points. If they'd turned a couple more results in their favour, they'd have shot right out of the table. So I think I'd expect a decent campaign from Brentford this season.
Yeah, I mean, they've just got to kill off the smaller clubs. They lost to Burnley this season and stuff like that. But then they went and drew with Chelsea, with Man United, with Brighton, with Villa. Yeah. That's the juxtaposition they're in at the moment, where they are so competitive against these big sides, but they just can't finish the job off on the smaller teams. I mean, they only lost 1-0 to City, 2-1 to Arsenal. Yeah. They don't get rolled over by the big sides. They've just got to be a bit more consistent. They lost to Sheffield United in December. That's criminal.
Criminal.
Just don't do that, and they'll be fine next season. But yeah, so I think that's everything for today. If you are enjoying this series, then go and check out. Or if you did enjoy this video, go and check out the rest of the series on video. And on screen now will be our video on Bournemouth, and look out for the other 16 teams as we're covering every single Premier League club in the build up to 24-25 season. So I hope you have enjoyed this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.